Start with this lesson with cameras because we're getting to that point where you're recreating a project based on a particular camera angle. All right, so it's a photograph, so we need to understand first how the camera works. So I'm gonna go to my layout here first. So this would be the first node right there. I'm sorry, module. All right, so to get into camera, it's either you select the camera icon right here, or you press 0 on the numpad and it toggles on and off. All right, so it simply zooms out in a way, goes into what the camera sees. So when you're not in camera mode, this is still a camera. You're just looking at it through the working camera. If I zoom out, there is the camera. All right, and in your outliner right here, it says camera right here, and that's the one. You can have multiple cameras because that's what we do in animation. You don't necessarily have to do it like in real life where a single camera setup or a multi-camera setup is, I mean, here cameras are free. You can just duplicate them. So it's better to have multiples of them than just moving one. So in case you want to go back to the previous shot, so on and so forth. Okay, so 0 on the numpad brings up the camera. All right, so how do we get the camera settings? With the camera selected, if you look at your control panels right here, you see it with a camera icon, and this is where all your settings for it. Okay, but the camera, while it's selected, when you press N for your the transform item panel right here, and it's in numbers, you see its location and its rotation. So this all pertains to the actual position of the camera where it's aiming at. However, you can control it here. You can slide this left and right and whatnot. So, however, if you want freedom to actually move the camera as if you're moving it in the working camera, like what we do here, you press N again. Instead of item right here, you go to Tools, View, okay, all the way down here, and there's a check mark where it says camera to view. You're actually locking the camera to view. So once you have this checked, when I scroll now to zoom out, I'm actually controlling the camera. So as you can see, all the movement that I'm doing as if it's a working camera, it's all about framing the camera. Okay, so let's put this on a little bit so we can see better. Okay, so if I have that thing unchecked, when I scroll, I lose the control. I'm just zooming in on kind of like the framing right here. But if I rotate the camera, there you go, I lose the camera, right? The camera, well, you don't lose the camera, you lose the camera control. The camera is still aimed right there, but you have freedom to kind of move around. But if I press 0, and let's say I want to show the front of this car, and I try to do a camera orbit, it's not going to work. Okay, so you have to lock the camera to view. Then you're now controlling the camera. All right, so let's learn how to split the views, okay? Or have more than one here so you guys can see the camera and control it as well. So we're lock camera to view. So I'm gonna press N just to hide this thing so I get more real estate. So if you position your cursor on any vertical line like this, you get to do a vertical split or a horizontal split. Same thing when you do it right here. And right click, okay? So you can split your screen. So either way, it'll work. So let's do a vertical split, okay? And then it'll ask you where you want to do the split. Doesn't matter, I'm just gonna put it here in the center, all right? So I got 2 screens now. One what the camera actually sees, okay? And then the other one here, I can just do whatever I want. It can be a working camera, okay? So I'm gonna press N on this one right here. Okay, view, and uncheck the camera. So now I'm independent of the camera movement. So I can actually show what the camera is relative to what's actually seeing. Here I'm going to uncheck that as well, just so that I could zoom in on this one, okay? So that I can just zoom in on that one right there. So I'm just leaving it as is. So there's no way, when this is unchecked, there's no way I'm gonna lose that camera position, because if I accidentally rotate this, I press 0, it's back. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna go to the top here. I'm gonna press number 7, so it shows the position of the camera. So if I grab this one, pressing G, all right, so I'm actually framing the camera. But rotating this, if I go to item right here, it's going to be a little tricky because it's at an angle. So that's why, it's we recommend that you actually do it here. Press N as in numbers and lock the camera view and do your own rotation right here. It's a lot easier because you're visualizing it, okay? You're really controlling the camera as opposed to here having to, figure out how, what's the angle, what is the pitch, if you're actually tilting the camera, so on and so forth. So it's a lot easier to control when you're operating it here, and then when you're done controlling, when you're really happy with the position of the camera, make sure you uncheck this, because any accidental rotation you do when this thing is on, that's a camera movement. When you have this off, you do rotation, then it just jumps out of the camera, so you preserve your camera right here. It's also good practice to actually duplicate that camera in case you do ruin your composition. All right, so let's say I'm going to go here, camera to view, right? I'm going to press 0 or press the camera icon. Let's say I'm really happy with this, and then, but every now and then you play with your camera to view, and you can just simply duplicate this camera. Shift D. Okay, you can Shift D it right here. All right. And then Blender would ask you, hey, you want to move this? Of course, you can move it right here. But if you right click, you can cancel that movement, and you got 2 right here. So, and then you can rename your camera, call this one camera copy. Okay. And then what you can do is lock this camera so you don't necessarily get to select it accidentally. All right. So one way to do it, just simply make it disappear. Can't see it, you can't possibly select it and missed it. All right, so you can also turn on selectability right here. So if I added this selectability restriction here, you'll have all that thing turn on, and you could even uncheck that just so that they will never, you will never be able to select it even if you can see it. Okay. So when I do this, I keep selecting that camera because it's not allowed to be selected. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to turn that off also. All right. So to show you here what that will do is that right now, let's say I'm on this camera and then I accidentally rotated it. Okay. You can click undo to that one, but it's not going to work because it's for an actual action. I think it's Shift Control. I forgot what's the camera undo, but anyway, so let's say that's the, you want to go back and you can't because it's already kind of ruined there. Well, there's the other camera as your backup. Okay. So the previous camera right here will always give you that option to actually look at your scene. So you have to do Control-0, sorry, to actually make that the active camera. Forgot to say that. So when you have multiple camera, you want one to be the active camera, meaning when you press 0, that's where it'll go. You have to do Control-0 for it. Okay, so I'm going to use that as a backup, hide it for now, select this camera right here, Control-0, make that the active camera again. Okay, and then I can position or whatever I want to do with it. Okay, so here let's go back to let's say the top viewport. We can easily visualize it. Okay, so now this is important that you have to position this camera to make sure it looks like your scene. Okay, and you have to also match, since we don't have any information on the shot, but if you've taken general photography, I would say, or basic photography, you would kind of know the focal length that they're using. Okay, and focal length here is based on 35mm film. Okay, because focal length means nothing not unless you understand the recording media for it. All right, because 50mm looks like wide angle, okay, or normal wide, and 35, but if we were talking large format, that's like extreme wide. All right, so 35mm photography is considered small format. So there's medium format and large format, and 50mm is 50mm. However, its coverage is very different. Okay, based if you're just standing on the same position. So you have to understand that 50, when we talk about 50 right here, we're talking about small format or 35mm photography, meaning all your DSLRs or SLR camera, that's what they're based on now, unless you're using a different film format. Okay, so if I change this to, let's say, 24, which is, you know, a common focal length for 35 instead of 50. All right, so you get a wider field of view. Okay, you get more coverage. However, it introduces some distortion. You probably see the fenders right here, they're a little bit more exaggerated now. Okay, I couldn't see probably the bottom tire in here because it's just warping now. Okay, let's go a little bit more wide. We're gonna go 18, so on and so forth. So fish eye. There you go. So 5mm. All right, so let's go back to 50. So you need to figure out what is the distortion on the lens or the focal length of the camera you're using. I mean the photo. Okay, so let's say for Tiago's, it's most likely going to be 50 or 40mm because, again, it's a 2D animated screenshot. So translating that into 3D is a lot of guesswork, right? Not a lot. It just kind of, you know for sure it's not a close-up, so it's wide, all right? The Despicable Me for Adon, it's wide, okay? So, and we're not talking about the letterboxing and all that, the aspect ratio. We're just talking about the distortion or the focal length. Okay, so if I go, let's say here, 100mm. All right, so now we're in detailing and you lose some of that distortion. Okay, so if I were to back up here a bit, so what you're saying now is that, what, isn't it the same if I just zoom out? Actually, it's not. 50 and 100, you zoom out, it's you're not going to get the distortion at 100. At 50, you will. Okay, so that's why it's important to understand when you do people photography that you understand what is the minimum required focal length when you do, let's say, a medium close-up or a close-up. If you use a wide-angle lens and then you get really close to that subject, they're not going to be happy with the result because their nose will get bigger, their forehead will get bigger, everything they hate about the feature in their faces will be exaggerated. So that's why, unlike medium close-up, you use like minimum 75 or 85 close-up. You use something even longer, like 135, sometimes even 200mm, because you just can't get close with a with an 85 close to a subject because there's a minimum focal distance. It will not focus. So, all right, here it doesn't matter. It'll focus because this is, you know, it's a digital camera. So let's say I go here 200. Really popular with wedding photographer because they can get really intimate with the couple, you know, and be away from them. So they look like really creepy guys from a distance taking photo, but that's how it is. So, you know, the more the couple can't see you, the more comfortable they are, and they can kind of go casually do their thing, and you take the best photo from a distance. Okay, so plus no distortion, as you can see here. Kind of provides you with a distortion-free look for the car. Okay, so that's why you see a lot of this angle, kind of like the orthographic view on racing, because they're so far and they're zooming in. When they zoom in, they use longer focal length on the car. It has that particular look, right? So they're actually around 400. So if I go 400 here, it gives you that kind of like that racing look when they're capturing it, okay? Because as opposed to, let's say we go to 50, all right, even if I zoom in like so, you get the distortion right there, okay? The fenders are a little bit more pronounced and whatnot. It has a particular look. I actually like this. 50 is my favorite focal length for 35 or even medium format. So, all right, I'm going to go 35 right here. Get a little bit more distortion. There we are, okay? 35, I'll go to 135. I back out a bit. All right, so that's a different look. Okay, so let's go back 35. Go in a bit. All right, see the distortion. It's actually showing me the ground plane and whatnot. Okay. All right, so for your project, you have to match it. So it's a little trial and error because we don't have information on the camera. Or let's say you're trying to recreate something that you shot yourself, then at least you would know what those things are. All right, and it's in millimeters right here. Let's talk a little bit more about the camera type. You got your panoramic, orthographic, and perspective. You're all going to be in perspective because those shots are in a perspective shot. You don't have to worry about the clip start and right here. Sometimes you would zoom in and it starts clipping, or you zoom out, it starts disappearing. That's when you need to change those, but for now, just leave those kind of alone. There's a depth of field right here. This is a separate lesson. Okay, this is the in a way sharpening or blurring parts of your photo. Okay, and now when we say depth of field, not necessarily the background. You can blur foreground, of course, and then it works in the aperture setting. If you understand your basic photography, then the bigger the f-stop, meaning the smaller the number, bigger the hole, it's the same thing. And then blades, it's how smooth your bokeh will be, or those blurred circles and whatnot, how defined they are, and so on and so forth. You can do rotation. So there's all these things that you can do. And then focus distance, you can tell Blender to be specific. Hey, be sharp on the headlight, or you can just base it on distance, or you could actually just click on this eye picker right here, and then you can just point where you want that to be sharp, and then that becomes it. Okay. All right. So again, separate lesson. Going back to camera right here, we're just going to use it's on 36 right here, and it's where you can change your recording. All right. So 35, 30, I don't think you can see the difference right there. Safe areas. Okay. You can turn this on. Once it's on, if I zoom in here, hopefully I don't, okay, let me turn that off. I just want to show it to you how the safe area, we're looking at the title safe and the action safe. Okay. You can also turn on your center cut safe areas, but not to worry about too much about that. So this is very important back in the day too, when we have bubble TV. Now flat screen, they pretty much show you close to what you see is what you get, but design wise too, simply means title safe is the smaller one inside. It means you're using border, meaning you probably shouldn't be putting any text outside the title safe. It wouldn't be design wise look nice. All right. The action safe is anything that you want, action wise or moving parts wise in your scene, you want them inside this. Okay, so you have this kind of imaginary border if you don't turn that on. If you're into photography or in cinematography, you will have this. You just know how to frame it. You don't have to see it because you're aware of it. You're used to it. Okay. So save areas is something you want to turn on and off. Just a guide. Totally up to you. I don't use it because I know I never put text like closer to the edge and whatnot. There's always this border that you'll have. Okay. So. But for this one, we'll just kind of leave that on. All right, so that's kind of like an overview on how to set up your camera and how to kind of position it, okay? And let's say you are happy with this position and now you want precision. So if I wanted to, let's say, pan up and down, sorry, I got to turn that on. Okay, it becomes kind of like a jib shot because it's panning at an angle, right? So let's say if you have the camera selected, I'm going to go to item right here where I can control my X, Y, and Z. So now if I just want the camera go up and down very precisely along one axis, instead of doing it here, you now have access to your Z axis right here. So I can actually go like so, and it will go up and down. Okay. I mean, you can also do it right here, but if you miss it by, if you were move it by with your middle mouse, it'll rotate a little bit, right? So to show you what's happening on that one, let me add another vertical cut right here. Okay. Oh, let me do it right here. Okay. So now let's go to the front right here. There you go. So you can see the camera. So Z-axis, it just does that to the camera. Okay. X, of course. So you can have really precise animations, like you got a computer-controlled jib or crane or whatnot, and of course Y-axis. All right, so really cool kind of camera movement using very precise information. Of course, you can go very organic here, and you don't have to go do it like that. So you can actually press G here to grab, and then X-axis, and it'll do the same thing. Okay, but like I said, multiple options. All right, so we'll end this lesson right here with camera, and we're gonna go into actually looking at your photos to actually match them.